I am 96 years old, and I let them take my life from me. I traded my last good years for a safe, empty room. This is my biggest life regret. You see, after my husband was gone, I was aging alone, but I was still living. My children saw a safety concern. I saw my home. They talked about my mental health, about keeping me sharp. They promised more connection. It was all a lie. The brutal truth is that I am lonelier here, surrounded by people, than I ever was in my quiet house. I feel my story ending, not with a period, but with an eraser. And I know so many of you are facing this same decision right now, for your parents or for yourselves. You believe you are choosing the best thing, the safe thing. Stay with me. You need to hear what this choice really costs. The end began in my living room. Sunlight used to mean peace in that room. That day, it just illuminated the dust in the air and the brochures my son David had fanned out on the coffee table. The Gardens of Maple Hill, Crestview Senior Living. Pictures of smiling, silver-haired couples, playing cards in bright lounges. Mom, we just can't worry about you being here all alone anymore, David said. His voice was so gentle. It was the voice you use on a spooked animal. My daughter Susan nodded, her eyes shiny with earnest worry. It's just temporary, she said. A trial run for your security. That word, security. It hung there, a closed door. To argue was to be selfish, to be the difficult, stubborn old woman refusing help. My independence, the quiet rhythm of my days with my books and my tea and my own thoughts, was recast as a collection of risk, a throw rug that could trip me, the stairs, the silence. My stubbornness was the problem they needed to solve. I looked at their faces, my own children, lined with a concern that felt like a verdict. I signed the papers. I thought I was compromising. I didn't know I was signing a surrender. The fall they kept mentioning was just a stumble. A bruised knee, nothing more. But in their minds, it was a preview, the first crack in the dam. So I packed a single suitcase, believing the temporary story. The Gardens of Maple Hill had a grand iron gate. It felt less like an entrance and more like a latch clicking shut. My room was nice, sterile, a hospital room dressed in pastel drapes. The window looked out onto a fenced-in patio. The first morning, I learned the new rules. Breakfast was at 7:30 sharp, not 7:25, not 7:40. I was led to a table with 3 other women. Mabel, who stared at her hands. Ruth, who slept with her chin on her chest. Helen, who smiled a vacant, endless smile. A plate of pale, rubbery scrambled eggs from a steam tray was placed before me. A television in the corner blared a game show, the audience laughter sounding like static. I pushed the eggs around. The cold certainty settled into my bones then, heavy as stone. I had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. This was the crisis. But it wasn't a dramatic event. It was a slow, quiet suffocation, a bureaucratic erasure. My autonomy was stripped away, layer by layer, with cheerful efficiency. When I woke up, when I ate, when I bathed, when I slept, all became subjects to institutional timetables. For your own good, Eleanor. It's policy, Eleanor. The loneliness was the worst part. It's a specific kind of loneliness, the kind that exists in a crowd of people who are all disappearing. We sat together in activities, balloon volleyball, sing-alongs, surrounded by each other, yet utterly, profoundly alone. We were a museum of forgotten lives. Then Nurse Janet took my book. It was my old copy of Pride and Prejudice, the one Robert gave me when we were first married. The spine was cracked. The pages soft with 50 years of touch. It was on my nightstand, a piece of home. Janet picked it up with her bright plastic smile. We'll just put this on the community shelf, dear, she chirped, so everyone can enjoy it. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I was too stunned, too conditioned already to not make a fuss. I watched her walk out, my history, my comfort, tucked under her arm. It wasn't a book. It was a piece of my identity, declared communal property. I didn't see it again. On the community shelf, it just looked lost. I learned to listen to the sounds of the hall, the squeak of cartwheels, the distant call for a nurse. And one Tuesday afternoon, I heard a soft, broken sound, crying. It was Mr. Finney across the hall, a small bird-like man who always wore a tweed vest. He was crying for his wife, Muriel. Muriel, are you there? He whispered over and over. The sound was pure, undiluted grief. It wasn't confused. It was just heartbreak. I shuffled to his doorway. I didn't go in. I just stood there, leaning on my frame. He looked up, his eyes wet and terrified. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, a witness. For a few moments, his pain was seen. Then an aide bustled around the corner, her voice a jarring melody. Now, Mr. Finney, let's not get ourselves worked up. It's almost time for music bingo. She whisked past me, a whirlwind of forced cheer, and guided him away. The connection, fragile as a cobweb, was severed. He became a task again. So did I. My granddaughter Melissa came once. She brought her little boy, my great-grandson I had never held. He was a whirlwind of curls and sticky fingers. Melissa spent the entire visit in a state of low-grade panic. Don't touch that, sweetie. That's not a toy. Come back here. She was so afraid of the place, of the germs, of the sadness, that she created a bubble of nervous energy around them. She talked too fast, smiled too wide. When she handed me a photo of the baby, her hands were trembling. The child looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. I didn't dare ask to hold him. I just smiled, the way I was expected to. When they left, the room wasn't just quiet. It was hollowed out. Their visit hadn't filled the space. It had just shown me how deep and empty it truly was. The cheerful, "Love you, Grandma," echoed into a deeper silence. The realization didn't come in a shout. It came in a whisper, looking at a we. This morning, I was at my window. The fence patio was empty, as always. The concrete was clean, hosed down. But there, in a crack, was a single dandelion, a stubborn yellow head pushing through the gray. It was growing where it was not supposed to grow. It would be pulled or poisoned, but for now it was there, defiant and alive. I felt a fierce, quiet kinship with that foolish flower, and I understood. I had consented to my own disappearance. I had agreed to be managed, to be safe, to be a patient instead of a person. My body was here, but I had let them convince me that my life was over. That was the trade. Safety for soul, routine for spirit. So I began my rebellion, the only one left to me, an internal one. I stopped trying to remember the schedule. I let my mind wander. I reclaimed my memories. I would sit in my chair and deliberately remember the feel of the sun on my back in my own garden, the weight of Robert's hand in mine, the smell of my old library, of dust and paper and quiet. I would replay conversations, not to dwell, but to prove I still had them. I started leaving my door open, a small act of defiance against the contained, closed-off feeling. When the cheerful activities director came for me, I sometimes just said, "No thank you," politely, firmly. It was a tiny reclaiming of choice. The look of surprise on her face was a small, sad victory. I wish I had known. I wish someone had said it plainly. A managed decline is not a life. Dignity is not found in safety nets and pureed food. It is found in the freedom to make your own mistakes, to have your own clutter, to be lonely in your own way, right up until the very end. The most brutal truth about this place isn't the neglect or the bad food. It's the systematic, kindly intentioned theft of personhood. We are treated as tasks to be completed, bodies to be turned, charts to be updated. We are not stories to be honored. They have taken our risk, and in doing so, they have taken our lives long before our hearts stop beating. So if you are listening and you are having the talk with your mother or your father, please hear me, see them, not the risks they pose, but the people they still are. The cost of perfect safety is a soul, and it is a price no one should ever pay. The sunlight was too bright that afternoon. It came through my living room window and showed every speck of dust on my bookshelves. My son David was sitting across from me, spreading brochures on the coffee table. They were glossy, with pictures of smiling, white-haired people in gardens. He said, "Mom, we just can't worry about you being here all alone anymore." His voice was gentle. It was the gentleness that hurt. My daughter Susan was nodding, her hands clasped tight in her lap. They talked about safety rails and emergency call buttons and nutritious meals. I looked at my books, my quiet, cluttered room. I felt the walls of my whole life getting smaller, right there in the sun. Their logic was like a tide. You can't stop a tide. 2 weeks later, I was packing a suitcase. Let me tell you about packing that suitcase. They called it a temporary stay, a trial run. So I was supposed to choose what I needed for a little while. I stood in my bedroom for an hour. I touched my favorite teacup, the one with the little chip Robert and I got on our honeymoon. I opened the photo album from our trip to Maine. The sea was so gray in those pictures. I ran my finger over the spine of my Pride and Prejudice. The cover was almost soft. I'd held it so much. I put them all back on the shelf. I packed some slacks, some blouses, my toothbrush. It felt like a promise, leaving those things behind. A promise that I was coming back. But when David's car pulled away from my house, I looked back. He turned the porch light off. It had been on for 30 years. The lobby of the garden smelled like lemons and boiled cabbage. There was a woman with a clipboard and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Welcome, Eleanor. We're so happy to have you," she said. It was like being checked in at a hotel, but wrong. Behind her, there was a row of people in wheelchairs by a big window. They weren't looking at the garden outside. They were all facing a big television screen, but it was off, just a black rectangle. That was my first real sight of them, just lined up. She called my next hour orientation. I felt like a library book. Scanned and given a number, ready to be put on a shelf. My first breakfast, they led me to table 4. "This is Eleanor," the aide said to the 3 people already sitting there. No one looked up. One woman was just stirring her oatmeal around and around. The eggs were from a big metal tray. They were rubbery and pale. The toast was cold. And the noise? A television was bolted high up in the corner. Some game show with too much applause. I tried to be polite. I turned to the woman next to me. "My name is Eleanor," I said. "I used to be a librarian." She just kept stirring her oatmeal. My voice got lost in all that bright, empty noise. That's when I knew this wasn't temporary. This was it. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, and it never really left. The worst thing at the start was small. Nurse Janet came in, all business. She had a bright voice. "Let's just tidy up, dear." She saw my book on the nightstand, my Pride and Prejudice. She picked it right up. "We'll just put this on the community shelf in the lounge," she said, tucking it under her arm, "so everyone can enjoy it." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I just watched her walk out with it. That book was like an old friend. It was mine. It felt like she'd walked off with a piece of my mind, a piece of my history. After that, I started hiding my things, a hairbrush, a notepad, but the feeling, that defeated feeling. It was already there, like she'd shown me who was in charge. You hear things here. The walls are thin. One afternoon, I heard this sound from across the hall, a soft, ragged crying. I shuffled to my doorway. It was Mr. Finney. He was curled in his chair, just whispering a name. Martha. Oh, Martha. I didn't go in. I just stood in my doorway. He saw me. We didn't say a word. I just stood there, letting him know someone heard him. Someone knew he was hurting. Then an aide came around the corner, her shoes squeaking. Now, Mr. Finney, she sang out. Let's get you to activities. Bingo's starting. You love bingo. She just wheeled him right out. He looked back at me once, and then he was gone. That moment was broken, like his grief was just a problem to be solved, a disruption to the schedule. I went back to my room and sat down. I understood then. Here, even being sad is something you're supposed to do on the calendar. Then there was the visit from my granddaughter Melissa. She brought her little boy. He was just a toddler, all curls and big eyes. Melissa was like a nervous bird. Don't touch that, sweetie. Not on the floor, honey. Great Graham doesn't want sticky fingers. She laughed a lot, a high, tight sound. She talked at me. He's saying so many words. We're so busy. The house is chaos. She called me Great Graham. I'd never been called that before. I wanted to hold the baby, just to feel that warm weight on my lap, but she never offered. She was too busy keeping him from touching the world. When they left, it was in a whirlwind of bags and waves and, bye, Great Graham. The door shut. The quiet they left behind. It was worse than before. It was hollow. I could still smell her shampoo, a sweet, fruity smell. It was the smell of a life happening somewhere else, far away from this room. And the bathing. Let me tell you about the bathing. Twice a week, it's the assisted shower. 2 aides come. They talk to each other over my head. Okay, Eleanor, arms up. Good girl. The water is always the same. Not too hot, not too cold, just wet. They use washcloths and they are thorough. They wash every part. I close my eyes. I pretend I'm in my old clawfoot tub at home. The water was deep and hot. I propped my book on the side and soaked for an hour. Here, it's fast, efficient. Dignity. It's like it gets washed down the drain with the soap. You feel clean when it's over, but you've never felt so small, so managed. Every evening, right after dinner, you hear the cart, the pill cart. It has a squeaky wheel. A different aide every night holds out a little paper cup. Here you go, Eleanor. They watch you. You have to tip it into your mouth, and then you have to show them. Show them your empty tongue. I took my own pills for 90 years. I never mixed them up. But here, I am not trusted. Not with the simplest thing. The bitterness you taste, it isn't from the pills. It's from having to prove you've obeyed. That bitterness stays with you. It makes everything else taste flat. The days started to blur together. You know what they call that here? A routine. They say it with a smile. Eleanor loves her routine, but it's not a routine. It's a schedule. There's a difference. A routine is something you choose. This was something done to me, like the chairs in the common room. They're arranged in a big semicircle, all facing the television. After breakfast, you're supposed to go sit there. Social time, they call it. I tried sitting in a different chair once, over by the window where the light was good. An aide came over. She was nice about it. Oh, Eleanor, let's get you to your spot. You don't want to get confused. She took my elbow and guided me back to the semicircle. My spot was between Mr. Finney, who mostly slept, and a woman named Doris, who hummed the same tune over and over. I looked at the window seat. It stayed empty all morning. morning. Then there was the phone. I had a phone in my room. David called every Sunday, like clockwork. His voice always sounded far away. "How are you, Mom? Are they treating you okay?" What could I say? "The eggs are still rubbery?" I'd say, "I'm fine, dear. It's fine." He'd tell me about his golf game or the weather there. We'd run out of things to say by the second minute. The silence on the line felt heavier than the silence in my room. One Tuesday, I wanted to call him, just to hear a voice that knew me from before. I picked up the receiver. There was no dial tone. I pressed a button for the front desk. The woman with the clipboard voice answered. "Is everything all right, Eleanor?" I said, "My phone seems to be out of order." She gave a little laugh. "Oh no, it's working. Outside calls just need to be placed through the front desk after 4 p.m. It's policy, saves confusion." I hung up. I just sat there, holding the dead receiver. It wasn't my phone anymore. It was their phone, in my room. The worst was the calendar. They have a big one on the wall in the hallway. Every day has a little activity written in. Music memory, chair yoga, current events. They will you to these things. At current events, a young volunteer reads headlines from the newspaper. She read one about a storm coming. Then she smiled at all of us and said, "But don't you worry, you're all safe and sound in here." Safe and sound. I looked around the circle. We were all sitting there, being kept safe from the weather, from falling, from our own stoves. And I thought, what good is being safe and sound if you're just waiting in a room? That calendar was the breaking point. I was looking at the word bingo when it happened. I just couldn't do it. I turned my wheelchair around and went back to my room. I shut the door. I sat there in the quiet. And then I cried. Not a soft cry like Mr. Finney's. This was ugly. My whole body shook. I was crying for my house, for my books, for Robert. I was crying because I was so lonely in a building full of people. I was crying because I was angry. I was so angry. At David, at Susan, at Nurse Janet. But mostly, I was angry at myself. That's when I realized what I'd done. I was wrong about everything. I thought I was being brave by not fighting them. I thought I was sparing my children worry. But I wasn't brave. I was a coward. I signed their papers. I got in the car. I let them take my book. I traded it all. My house, my things, my days. For what? For this room, for this chair, for the right to be willed to bingo. I gave it away. I sat there and I knew the full cost. I had lost the last chapter, the one where I was supposed to be old and difficult and free in my own home. The chapter where I got to decide when to have tea, or what book to read, or whether to just sit and watch the birds. They didn't steal it. I handed it to them, and you can't get that back. I remembered the last real conversation I had with Robert before he got sick. We were in the kitchen. He was making coffee. He turned to me and he said, "Promise me something, Ellie. Promise me you'll be a hellion. Don't let the kids put you in some home." I laughed. I said, "Don't be morbid." He didn't laugh. He just looked at me. "I mean it," he said. "Swear to me." I didn't swear. I changed the subject. I'll never forget what he said. I broke that promise. I wasn't a hellion. I was polite. I was manageable. And it broke me. After the crying stopped, I felt empty, hollowed out. But in that hollow space, a small, cold understanding settled. This was it. This room, this schedule. This was the rest of my life. There was no going back. The porch light was off. My book was on a common shelf. I was a resident of the gardens. That was the first sign of acceptance. It wasn't peace. It was a terrible, quiet surrender. The fight was over. I had lost. The fight was over. I had lost. But here's the strange thing about surrender. Once you stop fighting the walls, you start to notice the cracks. That small, cold understanding wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of a different kind of scene. I was wrong about so much. I thought dignity was something they could take from me with a shower or a pill cup. I thought personhood was in my things, my teacup, my book. But they're just things. What I really gave away wasn't in my suitcase. It was my voice, my no, my messy, inconvenient right to choose my own day, even if the choice was to sit and do nothing at all. That's the brutal truth they don't put in the brochures. It's not about care. It's about control. A gentle, smiling, absolute control. They trade your autonomy for their peace of mind and call it love. And we agree to it because we're tired and we're scared of being a burden, and we love them back. But love shouldn't feel like a cage for either side. Looking back now, I see the moment I could have changed it all. It wasn't at the family meeting. It was weeks before, when David first mentioned having a look at some places. I was polite. I said, let's not rush. I should have been a hellion, just like Robert asked. I should have looked my son in the eye and said, this is my home. I will die here. You can help me make it safe, or you can visit me here, but you will not remove me. I should have made it difficult. I should have valued my own freedom more than I valued being a good, manageable mother. That's the advice I have for anyone listening who can still see the porch light from their own window. Fight for your clutter. Fight for your weird routines, your too hot bath, your quiet. Fight to make your own mistakes. A broken hip in your own hallway is a tragedy. A whole, unlived life in a clean, safe room is a waste. Don't confuse safety for living. They are not the same thing. And for the children, the Davids and Susans, who are looking at those brochures right now, your heart aching with worry, I have this to say. Your fear is not a reason. It is a feeling. Do not let your fear for our safety become the engine that drives our lives into a quiet, painted corner. Ask us what we want, and then listen, really listen. If we say we want to stay, help us stay. Hire help, install rails, visit more. It will be harder for you. It will be messy and worrying, but that worry is the price of love, not an excuse to end the conversation. When you move us for our own good, what you are really doing is solving your problem, the problem of worrying about us. You are trading our reality for your relief. Don't. Love us enough to be afraid for us and let us live anyway. There is hope, but it's not the kind that comes with a pretty garden view. It's smaller and fiercer. My hope grew from that dandelion. They did pull it, by the way. A groundskeeper came and yanked it out the next day. But the next week, 2 more pushed through, a little farther down the crack. You see, they can't get to all the roots. My body is here. This chair is my chair. This schedule is my schedule. But my mind is a wild, untamed thing. In the afternoons, I don't go to music memory. I go to Maine. I feel the cold spray on my face, and I hear Robert laughing beside me. I reshelve every book from my old library, running my fingers along the familiar spines. I am building a world inside myself that no aid can tidy away. It is not the life I wanted, but it is a life I am claiming, inch by inch. They have my shell, but the story inside is still mine to tell. You can do that too, wherever you are. Start building your inner world now, before anyone thinks to put you in a chair by a window. Fill it with memories so vivid they feel real. That is your real home. No one can check you out of that. If this story has found its way to you, if it has rattled something loose in your chest, then please don't let it just sit there. I'm telling you this because I can't tell my own children, not in a way they truly hear, but you can hear it. You can help it be heard. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. It feels like a small thing, but it's a way of saying, I am paying attention. It tells the people who made this that these quiet, brutal truths matter. Give this video a like. Let it be a signal, a little flag in the digital noise that says, this is important. And in the comments, I'd ask you a simple question. What is one thing, one small, seemingly ordinary thing that you would fight to keep if someone tried to take it from you? Your favorite chair, your morning walk, the quiet hour with your coffee, name it. Writing it down makes it real. And then the most important thing, share this, not just into the void, but to someone specific. Send it to your brother who's starting to talk about options for dad. Send it to your best friend who's joking nervously about not being a burden. Send it to your own adult child and say, let's talk about this. The conversation has to start somewhere. Let it start here.